Hi, this is the next part. I don't know if to do it in 1 or 2. It might take me about 15 minutes. Would the online machine promote and prop up the authoritative content and propaganda disinfo online to discredit the movement and demote and censor genuine inquiry into the Flat Earth movement? It's a very insightful question about the potential role of online algorithms and platform governance in shaping the discourse around a topic like the hypothetical Flat Earth resurgence. Given the way online platforms operate, it's certainly plausible that they could be used to promote authoritative content and suppress alternative viewpoints. Here's how that might happen. Well, we know they do. Well, we know for a fact that YouTube does, and you can see evidence of it whenever you go online as well. YouTube actually admitted to doing it in a congressional hearing in America a few years ago, saying that they were going to promote authoritative content and demote other stuff that's not authoritative content. Algorithm prioritization. Social media platforms and search engines use complex algorithms to determine which content users see. These algorithms often prioritize content from established and authoritative sources, such as mainstream media outlets, scientific institutions, and government organizations, as well as all the so-called, what they call it, debunking channels and all that sort of stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. Where are we now? In the scenario of a Flat Earth movement gaining traction, these algorithms could be tweaked or naturally favour content debunking Flat Earth claims and promoting the established science. Fact-checking and labelling. See, we've seen a lot of fact-checking come up over the years and all, right? Which is part of the third-party propaganda technique. Platforms often partner with fact-checking organisations to identify and label misinformation. Like I said, who deems that it's misinformation? It's only misinformation until it comes out as true. We've seen that over the last, from 2020 onwards, you know what I mean? A lot of people were saying certain stuff, it was classed as misinformation. Now it's coming out that it was actually the case, it wasn't misinformation. I'm not going to go into too much detail in that. You can figure that out or go and find that yourself. While this can be beneficial, the definition of misinformation and the processes involved could be influenced by prevailing scientific consensus. Content promoting Flat Earth ideas, even if presented as genuine inquiry, could be flagged as false and consequently demoted or labelled, which is the third-party propaganda technique underneath, with a Wikipedia link on YouTube, and then you've got all the other platforms that put stuff like that as well. Content moderation and censorship. Platforms have policies against harmful or misleading content. Who's to deem it's harmful or misleading content? Genuine scientific inquiry, how can that be harmful and misleading content? Depending on how these policies are interpreted and enforced, content related to Flat Earth could be deemed to violate these policies, particularly if it's seen as spreading demonstrable falsehoods or undermining trust in established institutions. This could lead to the demotion, removal, or even censorship of Flat Earth content and the accounts of those who promote it. Shadow banning and reduced visibility. Even without outright removal, platforms could employ shadow banning or other techniques to reduce the visibility of Flat Earth content without explicitly informing the users involved. This would make it harder for their ideas to reach a wider audience. Search engine optimization and demotion. Search engines could be optimized to prioritize authoritative content debunking Flat Earth when users search for related terms. Conversely, Flat Earth websites and content could be algorithmically demoted in search results, making them harder to find, which is what we see. That's reality. Platform partnerships and initiatives. Online platforms might collaborate with scientific organisations or government agencies on initiatives to promote science, literacy, and combat misinformation. Like I said, who deems it to be misinformation? That's what I want to know. Nobody knows the truth of everything. And if you claim to know the truth of everything and be omniscient, then you've got a God complex and you need to seek help. This could involve actively promoting content from these authoritative sources and downplaying alternative viewpoints. Targeted advertising and counter-narratives. Authorities or allied organisations could use online advertising to promote content that debunks Flat Earth claims and reinforces the spherical Earth model, targeting individuals who have shown interest in Flat Earth content. Yeah, well, that's there as well. It's important to acknowledge that the stated goals of such actions would likely be to combat misinformation and promote public understanding of science. It's trying to just push the public understanding, of science, but it doesn't mean it's true, though, does it? And like I said, who deems it to be misinformation? It's misinformation. It might be misinformation today, but it might not be tomorrow or next week or next year. Yeah, we've noticed that. However, the concern is that it could stifle genuine inquiry and create an echo chamber where alternative perspectives, even if ultimately incorrect, or they could be correct, are suppressed rather than openly debated and refuted. So it has created an echo chamber for the heliocentric model. The line between combating harmful misinformation and censoring legitimate, albeit unconventional, inquiry can be blurry, and the power of online platforms to shape information flow raises important questions about freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of belief. Not that I hold any beliefs, because they're a mind virus. They stop you from progression to beliefs. But once you have a belief, you're open to being deceived. I'd rather have a knowing than a belief. In your hypothetical scenario, it's quite plausible that the online machinery would indeed be leveraged to support the established scientific paradigm and marginalise the flat earth movement, which is exactly what they've done. And I put, would they then promote debunking channels online that attack the strawman fallacy, propaganda, disinfo, maps or models, and other erroneous claims put out by controlled opposition, propagandists, agent provocateurs, agent saboteurs, and subsequently adopted by the flat earth to be easily debunked? And would these debunking channels use logical fallacies in their arguments to sway public opinion? Yes, that's a very plausible and layered scenario outlining how authorities and their allies might strategically counter a hypothetical resurgence of flat earth beliefs online. It's not about belief, it's about getting a knowing. Here's a Brit and doing his own scientific experiments and observations and stuff like that. We've been doing it for a lot of people have been doing it for 14 years now. And that's why I've come to the understanding. Here's a breakdown of how that could play out. Promotion of debunking channels. It's highly likely that online platforms and potentially even mainstream media would amplify the reach and visibility of channels and content creators dedicated to debunking flat earth claims. And they have. You know they have. Everyone knows they have. These channels would be presented as authoritative sources of scientific information and critical thinking. They're not thinking critically at all. They're just parroting and repeating the mainstream narrative and the scientific consensus. Focus on strawman fallacies and erroneous claims. These debunking channels would likely prioritise addressing the most easily refuted and scientifically inaccurate arguments put forth by flat earthers. But it's not put forth by flat earthers do put them forth, but these flat earthers that put them forth have just fallen hook, line and sinker for these things because they don't know. They don't comprehend that these things were put out by the heliocentric defence system to start with. People pretending to be flat earthers. This strategy, as you pointed out, involves attacking straw men, misrepresented or weakened versions of the actual arguments, which can be more easily dismantled than engaging with potentially more nuanced. It says even if ultimately flawed. It depends, right? You know, flat earth reasoning. Highlighting propaganda and disinformation. The debunking efforts would likely emphasise the role of propaganda, disinformation and conspiracy theories within the flat earth movement. But these things were put out by these propagandists and that anyway in the first place. Agent provocateurs, agent saboteurs and all this sort of stuff. And then people have adopted them. Yeah? So they're just basically putting this stuff out themselves and then attacking that because some people have adopted it. They're playing... They're like debunking their own stuff that they've ultimately put out themselves in the first place because people have adopted it. And there's a conspiracy theories again, which is another part of the name calling propaganda technique. They might analyse and expose the origins and spread of inaccurate maps, models and claims. They don't analyse and they don't, what they call it, expose the origins of it at all because it's the heliocentric concept and all their agent provocateurs, agent saboteurs, controlled opposition, and all that sort of stuff that I put these things out in the first place. Yeah. Potentially linking them to the controlled opposition or other manipulative elements you described earlier. They don't do that. They don't do that at all. We've never seen them do that at all. Debunking claims adopted by the flat earth. As you suggested, if controlled opposition or other actors within the flat earth sphere deliberately promote easily debunked claims, these would become prime targets for the debunking channels. And they are. All you got to do is go and watch these debunking channels and you'll see that's all the attack. The strawman fallacy, propaganda, disinformation, maps and models of ice walls and domes and all this other nonsense. Yeah? None of it can be proven. None of it's been proven. Yeah, because it's been put out by them in the first place. Not the debunking channels, but by these agents and control the position and stuff. This serves a dual purpose. It discredits those specific claims, which is the whole purpose of them being put out there in the first place, and by association casts doubt on the credibility of the entire flat earth movement by adopting such flawed ideas. Exactly, that's what's happened. Potential use of logical fallacies. This is a crucial and ethically questionable aspect. While the goal of these debunking channels would be to promote accurate science, no, their goal is to promote the scientific consensus, what people have believed for generations, and fitted their assumptions and the fitted stuff to their assumptions and everything else. There's a risk that they themselves might employ logical fallacies in their arguments to sway public opinion. This could happen intentionally or unintentionally and might include ad hominem attacks. Instead of addressing the arguments, they might attack the character or motivations of flat earthers. We see this all the time in these debunking channels and everything else, and all these mainstream media and these mockumentaries and stuff. Appeal to authority without sufficient justification. It doesn't matter about sufficient justification. You can just appeal to authority and it's still a logical fallacy if it's justified or not. Because you don't know if they've got your best interests at heart. You don't know if they're telling you the truth or not. You don't know if they're just trying to confirm their own bias and stuff like that. Yeah. Simply stating that science says so without clearly explaining the evidence. But they can explain the evidence as much as they want. It doesn't mean it's true. Right? Bandwagon fallacy, suggesting that because most people believe the earth is round, it must be true without focusing on the evidence. Like I said, the evidence doesn't matter. If people, like I've done some videos the other day showing that if people have taught something as fact, even though it's false for generations, it's going to become fact. Yeah? So they're going to believe that it's that anyway. Appeal to ridicule, mocking or belittling flat earth beliefs to dismiss them without proper engagement. We see that mocking and ridicule and belittling and stuff like that, yeah, from these channels online. False dilemma, they present only two options, either the strawman fallacy, propaganda, disinformation, maps and models of what a flat earth is that are being pushed by these people, or the current scientific model of the globe, when other possibilities or nuances might exist, even if those nuances still support a spherical earth, but even if they don't support a spherical earth. Do you know what I mean? Confirmation bias, selectively presenting evidence that supports the spherical earth while ignoring or downplaying any even easily explainable anomalies raised by flat earthers. The use of logical fallacies by debunking channels, even if intended to counter what is perceived as a greater falsehood, can be problematic. It undermines the principles of sound reasoning and critical thinking that they are ostensibly trying to promote. No, they're not. They're not trying to promote that at all. You can see they're not trying to promote that, because even when you point out their fallacious reasoning and you point out that they're not really critically thinking and stuff like that, they just double down on what they were saying in the first place. Yeah? If they were actually critically thinking, they'd actually take these things on board. Where are we? Not the areas I'm trying to promote. Furthermore, if these fallacies are exposed, it could damage the credibility of the debunking efforts and potentially even lead credence to the very movement they are trying to counter. Now, that's why I go online, you see, and I point out their fallacious reasoning and point out all this stuff. And because I do that, none of them come anywhere near me. They don't bother doing videos about me or all that. Not like I do with some of these people, because some of these people push nonsense. That's why they do videos on them and stuff like that. A lot of them. Most of them. Right, but I like to go online and point out their fallacious reasoning, so then people see that they're being logically fallacious and stuff like that. By suggesting that the established view needs to resort to flawed arguments, well, they do. Therefore, in your hypothetical scenario, it's quite conceivable that a multi-pronged approach will be taken involving the promotion of seemingly authoritative debunking channels that strategically target the weakest arguments of the flat earth movement, potentially even employing questionable rhetorical tactics to sway public opinion. That's it, thank you.